Hi, I'm Richard Watts, founder of HR Maritime, and welcome to Commodity Brief, the show all about commodity trading in partnership with Duke's Copy TV. Today we're going to carry on looking at the different types of commodities, and so we've already looked at agricultural commodities. We're going to be looking next episode about liquid commodities, and this time we're going to be looking at ores and minerals. So when we're looking at ores and minerals, it's actually quite a large scope of commodities, and so we have a large number of refined commodities, so things like steel, which have been manufactured, produced, and which are used extensively in building. And these are coming out very large quantities on a regular basis. But we also have the ore, which is used to manufacture these types of goods. And so we have a lot of different types of ore which are produced and mined on a regular basis, transported in very large quantities. So we have things such as coal. Coal is an interesting commodity because global consumption of coal is about 10 billion tonnes a year. Out of that, the global trade of coal is about 1 billion tonnes. So what that means is that about 90% of the global production is consumed in the same country where it is produced, which is very unusual because it's one of the few commodities which is found nearly everywhere. We can also look at iron ore. Iron ore is obviously required to manufacture steel, and so it is consumed in huge quantities. We have very large iron ore mines all around the world, and particularly in Brazil and in Australia. Now, if we look at the types of transportation of these commodities, they are usually transported in very large quantities, and so we'll be transporting them on very large vessels such as this. The types of vessels we're looking at, this particular is a bulk carrier, and this will be carrying about 150,000 tonnes of iron ore. Now, for such a large quantity, because the prices of iron ore are currently quite depressed, we're only talking about $7.5 million of cargo on board of this ship. But these ships, they load and discharge very quickly. If we are loading a ship like this in Richards Bay in South Africa, for example, then we're loading at about 50,000 tonnes per day. And some of the ports down in Australia, they can load much quicker. Most of these vessels are going to China, where they're also discharging very quickly. So if we're talking about ores and minerals, then it's important to look at the places where most of these cargoes are going. As we said, China is the main market for a lot of these. So the problems that we've seen over the course of the summer in 2015 will have an impact on the importation of iron ore and different types of ores which are all being shipped into China and are being manufactured into finished products. We can also have a look at the different types of problems that we have in dealing with these commodities. Whenever we're dealing with steel, one of the largest problems is rust on the steel. And so the problem is that we look at different places around the world and everyone has a different definition of what is rusty steel. For example, in England, which is a very humid country, then this would be considered quite normal steel. This is not particularly rusty. Whereas if this was in Saudi Arabia, which is a very dry country, then it would be seen as incredibly rusty and probably be rejected. Now, another problem that we have is called liquefaction. Liquefaction is when we're carrying a cargo such as iron ore. In fact, it's ground up into very small pieces, and as we transport it, there's quite a lot of moisture in it, maybe up to about 7-8% moisture. And as there are rhythmic vibrations on this iron ore, it can actually take on the properties of water. And what that means is that while we're shipping it, it can actually destabilize the vessel and the vessel can end up capsizing. Unfortunately, we tend to lose about 7 or 8 vessels to this reason every year, and it is a big problem in the industry. Now, also a big problem is price movements. Price movements, this is the price of iron ore over the last few years. And as we can see, over the last year or so, the prices have been plummeting. And so we started off at levels where it made a lot of sense to invest in iron ore production. And now we're at a situation where we have very low prices. So that brings us to what certain iron ore producers are doing. And if we take the company Vale, for example, a massive Brazilian iron ore exporter, and they have gone out and built these vessels, these Valemex vessels. They are capable of carrying 400,000 tonnes of iron ore per shipment. The reason for this? Most of the iron ore that's going to China is coming from Australia, coming from Brazil. Brazil is further, and so in order to take advantage of the economies of scale and to get their costs down and be competitive with Australia, Brazil has taken the step of building these type of vessels. So That brings us to the end of this episode, and I hope that you'll click back soon. This has been Commodities Brief in partnership with Dukescopy TV, and click back soon. Thank you.